Hashtag I discovered my boyfriend was a Russian soldier and had to make a choice. In a small town on the border between Ukraine and Russia, in the winter of 2022, Elena Kowalski, a 28-year-old nurse working at the local hospital, lives a routine marked by constant fear of bombings and the scarcity of medical supplies. Daughter of a Ukrainian family that lost everything in the war, Elena found in her work a way to maintain her sanity and help her devastated community. Her life takes an unexpected turn when she meets Dmitry, a 30-year-old man who presents himself as a Russian refugee who deserted from the army. He appears wounded at the hospital, speaking Ukrainian with a peculiar accent, carrying only an old backpack and a story about how he fled the war because he disagreed with the invasion. During weeks of recovery, Elena falls in love with his kindness, his way of caring for the children in the hospital, and the moments of tenderness they share amid the chaos. But the discovery of Russian military documents hidden in Dmitry's backpack reveals a devastating truth. He is not a deserter, but an active soldier on a reconnaissance mission. Between the love she feels for him and loyalty to her country and the victims she treats daily, Elena finds herself facing an impossible choice that could cost lives, including her own. A story about how war not only destroys cities, but also hearts, forcing us to choose between what we love and what we believe is right. The smell of ether and blood stuck to my skin in a way that no soap can remove. Even now, months later, when I close my eyes, I still feel the weight of those hands on mine, warm and trembling, begging for something I didn't know if I could give. They weren't the hands of an enemy. They were the hands of someone I loved with an intensity that hurt in my chest, that made me forget that outside bombs fell every night and that my country was bleeding. But discovering who he really was, that changed everything. The winter of 2022 came early that year. October wasn't even over, and it was already snowing heavily over our small town, as if even the sky wanted to hide what was happening. I had been working at the municipal hospital for 3 years, since I graduated in nursing, and I thought I had seen everything. Bodies torn apart by shrapnel, children with burns, elderly people who died of cold because they had nowhere to shelter. The war had transformed our hospital into something that looked more like a butcher shop, and I was beginning to lose faith in humanity. It was on a Tuesday morning that he arrived. I was on the dawn shift, that ghost hour when the moans of the wounded echo louder in the empty corridors. I had just lost a 16-year-old boy, shrapnel in the chest, too much blood, too little time. I was washing my hands at the sink when I heard the hospital door open with a creak that cut through the silence. He came in limping, supporting his left arm against his chest, leaving a trail of blood on the floor that our cleaning lady, old Olga, had just cleaned. Medium height, dark brown hair stuck to his forehead with sweat, eyes that seemed to have seen too much. He wore civilian clothes, a worn leather jacket, jeans torn at the knee, military boots that at the time I thought was just coincidence. "Please," he said in Ukrainian, but with an accent I couldn't quite identify. "I need help." It wasn't uncommon to receive Russian refugees. Many deserters crossed the border wounded, some repentant, others just scared. I had learned not to ask too many questions. At that moment, my only concern was the blood dripping between his fingers. "Come," I said, guiding him to one of the emergency room stretchers. "What happened?" "Shrapnel," he replied, carefully removing his jacket.
Mortar explosion.
I was trying to help a family get out of the combat area. When he took off his shirt, I saw the scar. It wasn't recent, a thick line that cut across his chest from the collarbone to almost the heart. A war scar, the kind that only someone who spent a lot of time on the battlefield has. But I also saw the gentleness in the way he thanked me when I started cleaning the wound, the patience with which he waited while I searched for supplies. "What's your name?" I asked, applying local anesthesia. "Dmitry," he replied, and for the first time he smiled. It was a tired smile, but genuine. "Dmitry Petrov. And you?"
Elena.
"Elena," he repeated, as if testing the name on his tongue. "Thank you for helping me." It took me 40 minutes to suture the wound. During all this time, we talked. He told me he was from a small town in the Rostov region, that he had been drafted into the army but deserted after seeing what happened to Ukrainian civilians. He said he was trying to reach Poland, where he had a cousin who could help him start over. He had a way of speaking that reassured me. Low voice, measured, choosing words carefully. He wasn't like the other soldiers I had treated, neither too arrogant nor too broken. He was human. "Do you have somewhere to stay?" I asked when I finished bandaging his arm. He shook his head. "I thought about finding some temporary shelter." Our shelters were packed. Entire families sharing mattresses on the floor, children crying from hunger, elderly people coughing in dark corners. It wasn't a place for someone who was still recovering from a wound. I can arrange a place for you to stay for a few days, I said, surprising myself. Until you recover completely. He looked at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. Gratitude, perhaps. Or relief. You would do that for me? I would do it for anyone, I lied. I wouldn't. I hadn't done it for any of the other refugees who passed through here. But there was something about him, a vulnerability that touched me in a strange way. I ended up taking him to my aunt's apartment, who had died at the beginning of the war. It was small with only one bedroom, but it had heating and hot water, rare luxuries in those days. I told him he could stay a week, just until the wound healed properly. He stayed 3. During those 21 days, my life changed in a way I didn't expect. Dmitry wasn't just a wounded refugee. He was someone who helped Olga carry the clean water buckets, who sat with the hospitalized children and told funny stories to make them forget the pain, who brought me hot coffee during the dawn shifts and stayed silent when I needed to cry after losing a patient. He had skilled hands. He fixed the sink faucet that had been dripping for months, helped reassemble one of the stretchers that was broken. When I mentioned that I had a leak in my apartment ceiling, he showed up the next day with tools and spent the whole afternoon fixing it. Where did you learn this? I asked, watching him work. My father was a carpenter, he replied, tightening a screw. I learned a bit of everything helping him. But it was in the small moments that I fell in love. The way he held my hand when we walked through the destroyed streets of the city. How he hugged me when I came home after a particularly difficult day at the hospital. How he whispered my name when we made love, as if it were the most precious thing in the world.
Yes, we made love.
It started in the second week, on a night when the entire city trembled with distant bombings, and I came home crying because I had lost 3 patients in one day. He hugged me, and somehow the hug became a kiss, and the kiss became a desperate need to feel something good amid so much horror. He was gentle, careful. He touched my body as if it were made of glass, kissed every small scar I had accumulated working at the hospital. Afterwards we lay in the darkness, him tracing invisible drawings on my back while I listened to his heartbeat. When all this is over, he said one night, we'll leave here. Me, you, a place where you don't hear the noise of war. I wanted to believe. I wanted so much to believe that I even made plans. I thought about requesting a transfer to a hospital in Lviv, away from the border. I imagined what it would be like to wake up in the morning without worrying if there would be electricity or water. What it would be like to have a normal life, with someone who loved me and whom I loved back. Dmitry never talked much about the war. When I asked about his experience in the army, he changed the subject or fell silent. I respected that. I thought it was trauma, memories he preferred not to revisit. We all had our ways of dealing with horror. But there were small details that should have alerted me. The way he knew the city better than he should for someone who had arrived recently. How he knew exactly where the air raid shelters were, the escape routes, the water distribution points. The precision with which he identified types of ammunition by the sounds of explosions. 120mm mortar, he said one night, when we heard a distant boom. How do you know that? I asked. He was quiet for a moment. You learn to differentiate when you stay close to war long enough. It made sense. It made perfect sense. The discovery happened by chance, in the 4th week. I was washing his clothes. He had insisted it wasn't necessary, but I liked taking care of him that way. When I grabbed the leather jacket, I felt something rigid in the inner pocket. A wallet, small and worn. It wasn't my intention to look. I swear by everything sacred that it wasn't. But the wallet was half open, and a photo fell to the floor. When I bent down to pick it up, I saw. It wasn't a family photo. It was a Russian military identification. My hands trembled when I opened the wallet completely. There was everything: military identity document, base access card, even a paper with coordinates written by hand. The name was right, Dmitry Petrov. But the rank was lieutenant, and the unit was reconnaissance. Reconnaissance. Not regular infantry. Not a common soldier drafted against his will. Reconnaissance meant espionage, infiltration, collection of strategic information. I sat on the laundry room floor and cried. Not a cry of sadness, but of anger. Anger at myself for being so naive, anger at him for lying, anger at the world for not letting me have one good thing without complications. When I stopped crying, my head was clearer. I started putting the pieces together. The way he asked subtle questions about the hospital routine, about the hours of greatest movement, about which Ukrainian military authorities were treated there. The walks he took alone through the city, always returning with information about new shelters or distribution points. He wasn't a refugee. He was a spy. And I had fallen in love with him. I put the documents back in the wallet and placed everything back in the jacket pocket, exactly as it was. I needed to think. I needed to decide what to do with this information. That night, when he returned to the apartment, I was preparing dinner. Potato soup with some pieces of meat I got on the black market. Simple food, but which in recent days had become a small tradition between us. "How was your day?" he asked, kissing my forehead. "Normal," I replied, unable to look into his eyes. "And yours?" I walked around the city. I was thinking, maybe it's time for me to leave. I don't want to be a burden to you. Leave. After collecting all the information he needed, of course. "You're not a burden," I said, still stirring the soup. "You can stay as long as you need." We had dinner in silence. I watched his every movement, every expression, trying to understand how I hadn't noticed before. Or maybe I had noticed, but chose to ignore it because it was easier to believe the lie. After dinner, we went to bed. He hugged me as always, but this time I couldn't relax. I lay there, looking at the ceiling, feeling the weight of his body against mine and thinking about all the people who could die because of the information he had collected. How many Ukrainian soldiers? How many civilians? How many children like the ones I treated at the hospital? "Elena," he whispered in the dark.
Are you okay?
Elite. Are you sure?
You're different today.
I turned to look at him. Even in the darkness, I could see his eyes. The same eyes that looked at me tenderly, that filled with tears when he told me about his memories of the war.
Dimitri, he said, tell me something true about yourself.
He was quiet for a long moment. "True how?" "Anything."
Just true.
He sighed.
I love you, Elena.
"That's true." And the worst part is that I believed him. The next 3 days were torture. I pretended everything was normal, that I didn't know who he really was. But every conversation, every affectionate gesture, every "I love you" he whispered was like a stab. Because part of me still wanted to believe that the love was real, even if everything else was a lie. I tried to convince myself that I could simply do nothing. Let him leave when he wanted, pretend I had never discovered the truth. But every time I looked at the children in the hospital, at the bodies that arrived torn apart, at the families crying for their dead, I knew I couldn't. I had two options: report him to Ukrainian military authorities or confront him directly. I chose to confront him. It was on a Friday night. He had gone out for one of his walks, and returned with a strange expression on his face. More serious, more focused. As if he had made an important decision. "Elena," he said, as soon as he entered the apartment.
I need to talk to you. Mayatra said.
About what? About leaving.
Tomorrow morning.
Of course. Mission accomplished. So soon. He approached and held my hands. "I don't want to leave. You know that. But there are things you don't understand. Things I can't explain." "Then explain." "Elena." "Explain," I repeated, more firmly. "Or I'll explain to you." He looked at me with a confused expression. "What are you talking about?" I went to his jacket and took the wallet from the pocket. I saw the exact moment he understood. "Elena, I can explain." "Can you?" "Then explain how a Russian army reconnaissance lieutenant becomes a refugee deserter." He was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different. Firmer, more controlled. The voice I imagine he used when he was on duty. "How long have you known?" 3 days. "And you didn't say anything." "I wanted to hear it from you." He sat on the bed, ran his hands through his hair. "It wasn't supposed to be like this." "How was it supposed to be?" "It was supposed to be a simple mission. Get in, collect information, get out. A few weeks, maybe a month." And it was. No, he said, facing me. It wasn't. Because I didn't expect you. Don't give me that. Elena, I love you. That's not a lie. Everything about you is a lie. I got up, went to the window. Outside, the city was plunged in darkness. Curfew. Another night of war. What are you going to do? He asked behind me. I don't know. You can report me. It would be the right thing to do. I turned to look at him. Would it? From a military standpoint, yes. And from a human standpoint? He didn't answer. Dmitri, I said, how many people are going to die because of the information you collected? I don't know. You don't know or you don't want to know. Elena, war is war.
People die arriver.
People like the children I treat at the hospital? He remained silent. Answer, I insisted. People like the children you comforted when they cried in pain. Elena, please. Answer. Yes, he said, finally. People like them. I sat in the chair by the window. I felt as if the floor had disappeared from under my feet. You played with them, I said. You told stories. You made them laugh. I know. How do you manage it? Manage what? Taking care of them, knowing you're helping to kill others like them. He got up from the bed, came to where I was.
Elena, you don't understand.
I didn't choose this war.
None of us chose it.
But you chose to lie to me. Yes. You chose to use my love to facilitate your mission. No, he said, kneeling in front of me. Not that.
What if il for you Israel?
I looked at him, at that face I had kissed so many times, at those eyes I thought I knew. Prove it, I said.
How? Don't leave. Stay here with me. Abandon your mission. Elena, you don't know what you're asking.
I know exactly what I'm asking. If I don't return, they'll know something went wrong. They'll send others.
More violent ones.
That's their problem. It's everyone's problem, he said. Elena, if I stay, you'll also be in danger. I'm already in danger. I've been in danger since the first day of this war. He held my hand. If I stay, it has to be forever. You understand that? I can't return to Russia. I can't return to my previous life.
Do you want to return? He don't know what he want anymore.
Then figure it out. That night, we didn't sleep. We stayed talking until dawn, him telling me the truth about his life, about the war, about the things he had seen and done. He wasn't a monster. He was a man lost in an impossible situation, trying to survive in a world that made no sense. But that didn't change the fact that he had a mission. And that people were going to die because of the information he had collected. When the sun rose, he made a decision. I'm leaving, he said. Today.
Dmitri.
But I'm not going to make the report. I looked at him. What? I'm going back to the base. I'm going to say the mission was unsuccessful. That I couldn't get useful information. Will they believe it? Probably not. But it will delay things. Maybe it's enough for you to prepare better. And you?
Elle pays the price.
I knew what that meant. Desertion in wartime is not easily forgiven. No, I said.
Don't do that. Elena. Stay with me.
Please.
Et kisse-me.
It was a long, desperate kiss, as if it were the last. I can't, he whispered against my lips.
He can't do this to you.
Let me decide that. If I stay, you'll look at me every day and remember who I am. What I did.
I love you.
I love you too. That's why I need to go. 2 hours later, he was at the door with his backpack on his shoulders. The same backpack he brought on the first day, now without the false documents, without the carefully prepared lies. Elena, he said, I want you to know that these days were the best of my life.
Dmitri.
Don't forget me, but don't wait for me either.
Will you take care of yourself?
I'll try. He turned to leave, but stopped at the door.
Elena, one last thing.
What? There's a planned attack on the hospital.
In 3 days, at dawn.
Transfer the patients. And then he left. 3 days later, 10 minutes after midnight, 3 missiles hit the hospital. Fortunately, all patients had been transferred to other buildings. Nobody died. I never heard from him again. Sometimes, on nights when I can't sleep, I wonder if he managed to return to the base. If he invented a convincing story about the mission's failure. If he's alive, if he's well, if he still thinks about me.
Other times, I wonder if he did the right thing.
If I should have reported him from the first day. How many lives could have been saved if I had been stronger, more patriotic, less naive? But the truth is I don't regret it. Not completely. Because for 3 weeks, amid the horror of war, I knew love.
True, deep, complicated.
And even knowing he lied about who he was, I still believe he didn't lie about what he felt. The war ended up teaching me that the world is not made of heroes and villains. It's made of people trying to survive, trying to find a little humanity amid chaos. And sometimes, just sometimes, we find that humanity in the most unexpected places. Today I work at a hospital in Lviv. I still treat war wounded, still see children crying in pain, still smell ether and blood stuck to my skin. But I also know that love exists in the world. Complicated, impossible love, but real. And when the nights are too long and the nightmares return, I remember his hands tracing invisible drawings on my back. And for a few seconds, I can forget that outside there are still bombs falling. Maybe that's what war really teaches us, that love and pain can coexist in the same heart, that we can hate and love the same person, that the most difficult choices are those we make with broken hearts. Dmitri taught me that the enemy can have a human face, that he can be gentle, careful, capable of comforting a wounded child. And that doesn't make him less dangerous, just more complex. I made my choice. I let him leave knowing I could have prevented more deaths. But I also saved the lives of dozens of people at the hospital. And I learned that sometimes love isn't about staying together. It's about letting go. I still wear the bracelet he gave me. A simple leather cord, nothing special. But it's my way of remembering that even in war, even in lies, something true can be born. And if someday I meet him again, in a different life, in a world without war, maybe we can start over. This time, with the truth from the first day. Until then, I take care of the wounded, save the lives I can save, and carry with me the memory of 3 weeks when love was stronger than war. Even though it lasted so little. Even though it broke me in a way I'm still learning to fix. Because in the end, that's the choice we all make, between love and fear, between truth and lies, between moving forward and staying trapped in the past. I chose to move forward. But I'll never forget.